There you go.
That's great.
We're off.
Right, guys. Welcome to the talk on pole vault mechanics, biomechanics. Paul asked me if I would speak to you guys and just sort of bring some of the forces and the biomechanics to life, and using the example of one of the sports that I coach, which is pole vault. You can see by my other sport is boxing, but pole vault is far more interesting when it comes to talking about biomechanics. And indeed, I'm going to illustrate this with a couple of examples that show you where at certain times we pull more G than a fighter pilot, and at what point we accelerate 3.3 times faster than a Tesla Model S. So I'm going to show you whereabouts these things occur and how. But first, really, there's a couple of things I need to explain about terminology. The first thing that we have is, now, I wasn't able to get a pole vault pole into my front room, so I have a broomstick, and believe it or not, we use these quite a lot for practice training. But first of all, we need a pole with which to jump. And these are made out of fiberglass, carbon fiber. Some of them are made out of plastic. And believe it or not, despite what you think, the pole does not want to bend. It wants to remain straight. And what we have to do is we have to put our energy into it in order to make the thing bend. And then as it tries to straighten, we can recover that energy. So that's a vaulting pole. The next part of the system as such is the pole vaulter. In this case, I'll use myself as the example. I'm an ex-pole vaulter. I went to 2 World Masters Championships, won either 5 or 7 national championships, I can't remember, but I did the event for a long time. The other thing we've got to talk about as well is the run-up, where you approach and build up speed. And we've also got the box. You'll hear me refer to the box. This is where the pole goes. Now, some people won't know, but the pole would just skid along the floor due to friction. So we need a box here to stop the pole sliding forward there. Other terminology, the takeoff leg is this one, the free leg is this one, and this one's what we call the top hand. And the top hand is quite significant because we can dictate which hand a vaulter is dominant with. So in my case, I'm a right-handed pole vaulter, so my right hand goes at the top and the left hand would go underneath like this. It performs similar but slightly different tasks. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you a video. So I'll have to do my share my screen and show you a video, slow motion video, in fact, of Armand Duplantis, Swedish-American pole vaulter, current world record holder. It's a slow-mo vid, so you'll be able to see what's going on. And I'm going to stop it and replay this thing a couple of times to you later on as we look at the different phases in the pole vault. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this video for you now. I'll share my screen, play the video, and I'm going to talk about the 4 different phases of the pole vault. The first phase is the run or the approach. The second phase is the swing, where the pole is bending and we're swinging up. The third phase is the inversion, where we turn upside down. And then the 4th phase is the bar clearance. We don't count falling to the ground as a phase. It's just something that gravity forces us to do. So we're not actively involved in doing anything but falling. What I'll do is I'll show you a video of this, and you'll see the man that is the current world record holder, and without a doubt is the best pole vaulter on the planet right now. So I have to do a screen share, and I will try, and I'm not brilliant with computers, so just give me a second to get this correct, and then if I can show you what this looks like. Okay. Don't think this is the right bit. Let me just get that out of the way. I've got a box that keeps coming down and interfering with what I'm trying to do. This is the one. Here we go. Guys, can you just give me a yes or no? Can you see what I've got on screen there?
Yep, you're up live on the screen, Matt.
Okay, this is Mondo Duplantis. So what you see now is he's actually in the run phase. So he's in the approach phase here. And then what happens is he's then going to do what's called planting the pole, which puts it into the box. So you won't see the box because it's down behind the pole vault mat there. And the pole vault mat is actually extends back behind the box in case we make a mistake. And when I say in case we make a mistake, there are around about 20 to 30 people each year killed doing this event. So we do need some good safety equipment for this. There we've got the plant, and at this point the pole is bending and he's swinging. You'll notice the pole is moving forward, as is he. Now there, the pole is at maximum bend. It's at this point, if it's going to break, it would break at this point. But what's happening now is he's gone through the swing and now he goes into the inversion. This inversion, believe it or not, even though it's at slow-mo, you're about to see him accelerate 3 times faster than the Tesla Model S is capable of doing. This will only occur over 3 meters, but the forces are immense. And here we go. And there's the bar clearance. And watch as he falls to the ground, and you'll see at the point that he lands, oh, they're not going to show it in that clip. At the point that he lands, he will actually pull more G than a fighter pilot. There we are, one more time in slow motion. And I'll come back to the screen. Okay. To give you some perspective, that bar is set 2 meters higher than the top of a double-decker bus. That gives you some idea as to how that is. So let's talk about the different phases. Let's talk about the biomechanics of it. So the first thing we've got is we've got the run. So I start with my pole here. We can't carry it like this. It's not possible. So we carry the pole like this. And this pole is going to be around about, in his case, about 17 feet long. That is 3 feet higher than the length of a double-decker bus. They're huge. They're very, very big. And poles are different lengths and different strengths. So if you were new to this, you'd be starting on a much shorter pole and a much more bendy pole, an easier pole to use. His pole, the chances are, even if you stood there and bent it as hard as you could, you'd barely make it move more than 10 centimeters because it's your speed that bends the pole rather than your strength. Now, let's talk about some of the forces involved in this. Now, we know that Newton's first law of motion states that a body will stay at rest or at motion unless acted upon by another force, an external force. Now, as I'm standing here and I've got my pole and I'm about to begin my run like this, in order for me to move forwards, there's going to be a couple of things that I'm going to need to do. Now, if this floor is too slippy, and I begin to slip back, then that's not going to happen. I'm not going to move forwards. So how many of you know what the force is that's going to cause one thing to grip against another? Can anyone shout out the answer?
Just repeat the question. What is a force that allows a grip against something? Any ideas? I think friction. You've got some answers for friction?
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at one of the first bits of equipment that we have. This is not my particular spike, but this is a spike. Can you see that? It's got spikes on the bottom of the shoe there. And these spikes will actually increase the friction between the foot and the track. Now, of course, we have our ground reaction force, which is essentially what my weight is placing on the ground. And as we know, forces occur in pairs, equal and opposite. So if my weight is 75 kilos, I'm pressing down on the earth with 75 kilos. If I didn't apply a force in the opposite direction, I would crumble. So we've got friction and we've got a ground reaction force. Now we look at Newton's second law of motion, which is force. I always remember this as the formula, so rather than what it is, basically the more force you apply, the faster you're going to go. So force equals mass, the mass of me, times acceleration. So as I begin my run, I must apply a force in order to move forwards. And this is Newton's second law of motion. And as I move forward, then I'm going to make my approach into the pole vault box. Now, the reason that we have the pole vault box there is if I had my pole, and here's my pole, and I landed on the ground like this, there would not be sufficient friction to stop this pole from moving forward, and it would skid and the vault would not take place. So the box, shaped like this here, it's about 20 centimeters deep. It's quite big, you can't miss it. That said, I've seen people miss it, but it's very difficult. It's about 1 meter long and 20 centimeters deep, and this kind of catches the pole like this. This then allows me to apply force to the pole and then to go up like that. Now, when I'm running in like this, I'm gaining speed, if you like, or velocity, because it has a direction, so therefore it is a vector. So I have velocity as I'm moving in. And what I'm doing is, as I'm doing this, I'm gaining energy. And the type of energy that I'm gaining is called kinetic energy. And this kinetic energy is as a virtue of my speed, but it is also a function of my weight. So let me give you an example of how this works. And this might be new to some of you, but I'm going to give you the formula for this. And I'm going to put it on this side of the board, because this is where we gain our kinetic energy. We are running towards the pole vault, towards the takeoff. Of all the things that we do as pole vaulters, running fast is the most important thing. There's nothing more important than doing that. Good pole vault technique obviously is really, really important. But if you can't run fast, you won't be very good at this event. So over here we've got, on this side of the board, we've got kinetic energy, KE. And this is, I'll bring this camera forward. This is half mass times velocity squared. Okay, bring this forward a little bit so you can see my writings on here. This is on a tripod, so excuse me that I just move it very carefully and slowly so that I don't make a mess. Okay, right. So we've got kinetic energy of a half mass times volume. So we're going to use my own body weight and my own mass and speed that was measured with during sports science labs. And I'm going to apply this so that you can see how much kinetic energy that I was able to create when I was running myself. So what we've got is we've got mass. Now, at the time, I was 75 kilograms. And the velocity with which I would get into the pole vault box here, doesn't matter how fast you run on the run up, the only thing that matters is how fast you take off. That's really, really important as we do that. When we do that, mine was 9.2 meters a second. So it's a bit like running about 10.8 seconds for 100 meters with a 15, 16 foot pole in your hand and then jumping. And we've got to multiply that by itself. So 9.2 meters a second times that. So, 9, I've got the 9, there we go. And that turns out, if we calculate this, that turns out to be 84.64 times by 75. Now we've got half of that is the amount of energy, so we divide it by 2. And this turns out to equal 3,174 kilojoules. I calculated earlier Mondo's approach, because Mondo he's the best pole vaulter in the world. His body weight is higher than mine, it's a bit taller than me. He was 79 kilos and he approaches at 9.6 meters per second. So fantastic athlete that he is. And as he did that, he was actually generating 3,600 kilojoules. So he's coming in and creating more kinetic energy than I am. This will enable him, in theory, to vault higher than I'm able to do. Now, that's a lot of force that's going to be applying here. Now, I'm going to move my camera back, but just look at this top hand here on this diagram there. Now, we've got to go back to that original force that you guys called out just a couple of minutes ago. Otherwise, this is not going to work for me. As I take off, and the pole is here like that. As I take off, if I don't have friction between me and the pole, my hands will simply slide down like that. And this can be a limiting factor for some people. If your grip strength is not good enough, you can't generate enough frictional force to hold onto the pole, and you actually skid down the pole. Dangerous, very, very dangerous. So we don't want that to occur. So what we must do is we've got to consider that friction is in play at all times when we're doing this. Now we move on to the second phase of the pole vault. And just to go back once again to a previous thing I mentioned before, the ground reaction force here, your takeoff here, it's been measured, and to measure this, we put what's called a force plate in the ground. It's a big lump of iron, and it measures the force when you take off. And on average, it's 9 times your body weight. So in my case, that is 675 kilograms. There you go. You can multiply that up into newtons if you'd like to. So 750 newtons on takeoff. So basically, on takeoff, I'm exposed to 3/4 of a ton of force on takeoff. And I have to be able to grip that pole as that happens there. The energy from my run is transferred into the pole and it begins to bend like this. Now, I'm not very good at drawing. I'm not good at drawing at all, so you'll just have to bear with me as we do this. Now, the pole will bend like this, and the pole vaulter will be in this position here, there. Legs begin to move up like this. Now, here's the part that's really, really interesting. I mentioned before that this is now the swing, as we swing up there. Now, the pole does not want to bend. It doesn't want to do that at all. And we draw a line between the top hand and the bottom of the pole here, and this is called the chord. This is the chord of the pole. Now, as long as you stay behind the chord of the pole here, the pole, it will keep moving forwards and it will keep bending. The second you pass the chord of the pole is going to unwind. It's going to straighten out and you will begin to recover that energy. Now, you have stored an immense amount of energy in this pole when you do this. Something I want you to show you as well, which you won't be aware of. At this point, when the pole is bent like that, I've got a toilet roll tube to show you. When a pole bends, it does not retain its round structure like this. It actually goes oval like that. Now, when a pole snaps, it very quickly retains that straight position and circular structure there like that. And it's not unusual if a pole snaps when you're gripping to it like this, because of the forces involved. It's not unusual to break your hand if that pole snaps. And it will only move from there to there, maybe 5 millimeters, but the forces involved are so great, it can break your hand. So we do have to, we don't want to break them. So we've gone past this, and what we do is the swing has added energy to this pole system here like this. And at this point, this is where one of the technological technique advancements that we've made with pole vaulting has come to fruition. What happens with this is that we try to maintain kinetic energy. We try to maintain speed. Whereas before, in the old days, we used to do a tuck and shoot, and we'd achieve what's technically termed a moment of inertia, a moment where you're not actually moving anywhere, you just stop. It's an old technique which we've now gone past, and now we try to maintain as much speed as we can up like this. But as we begin to climb, we begin to accumulate gravitational potential energy, which is potential energy based on gravity. You guys will have done this, I'm sure. That's 9.81 meters a second. That's gravity due to the Earth's gravitational field, like that. And this is represented by mass oh sorry, this is gravity. We actually write it the other way around, write it like this. So I'll write it here. We go mass, which in my case, 75 kilos, times gravity, times height. And this is 9.8 there. So when we've got this here, we've got 9.8 meters per second. Gravity multiplied by 75 kilos of force. And then, however fast I'm running, because we know the first law of thermodynamics is that energy is not created or destroyed, it's merely transferred from one type to another. So in this case, it's transferred from kinetic energy to gravitational potential energy. It's not going anywhere. So the faster I run, the higher I'm going to go, because these are constants. They can't be changed. So the faster I go, the higher I'm going to go. So it's very important for us to do this. Now I'm going to leave this blank just for now, because we are going to do the calculation at the end to figure out exactly how high, in theory, I should be able to go. Now, once we've done this and we've got past that that part, this is where the really exciting bit happens. This is very exciting, this part, because the pole is going to straighten in 0.6 to 0.7 of a second. And in that 0.6 of a second, we will invert completely and go upwards around about 3 meters. At that point, we are accelerating 3.3 times faster than a Tesla Model S. So I'm not very good at drawing, so here's a car. There's that's a space age kind of Tesla looking thing. It's 3.3 times as fast as that thing going up like this. It's only momentary, but we have to get ourselves into that position and just hang on as hard as we can when we're doing this. Now, once we've done that, we're then going to move towards the bar clearance. And at this point, this is where, now we're not cheating the laws of physics, but what we're doing is we're doing something to manipulate not the laws of physics, but the way in which our body behaves. The best thing I had to actually demonstrate this was my mobile phone, okay? If my phone is like this, there, you can imagine a central axis about which that would rotate, so it would spin like this. Or if it was here, it could spin like this. Now, imagine if I'm stood like this, here, sideways, and you've got something that goes through here, because by and large, your center of mass is around about here, like this. And what happens is that will then, I will be able to rotate around that. But if I change my body shape or position, I can actually then change what's happening. And my center, the center of mass will always remain in my body, okay? That's my mass, it's always in the center. The mass is somewhere in here. However, gravity is the way, and your center of gravity is a different thing. Your center of gravity can actually move outside of your body. Here's an example. I'm standing like this, upright. To move forwards, I lean forwards, center of gravity, the force at which gravity is affecting my body moves out of the body and it allows me to move forwards. That's how we walk. We are manipulating our center of gravity. Now imagine a pole vaulter in this case. Let's have a look at this position here, because this looks a bit like a bar clearance there, an L shape. Now that, as that's going there, will begin to rotate here, but it will not rotate around. Sorry, if you can't see that, it's a bit difficult, isn't it there? Let me just get that on camera. You will not rotate around this point here, but at a point somewhere in space here, like that. It's going to be around about there. And what we can do by altering our center of our body position, we can come off the top of the pole and our center of gravity can pass under the bar, whereas our center of mass on our body passes over the bar. And believe it or not, this gives us about an extra 10 to 15 centimeters when we do the bar clearance here. I've lost my pen somewhere. Let me just find that. Okay. So when we get to the bar clearance, we're in this kind of position. There's the feet, there's the head, and the pole is down here. You'll have noticed when a good pole vaulter clears the bar, that as they leave, there is a gap between the pole and their body. We refer to this as super elevation. That's what that's referring to super elevation. Now, what we can do is we can then begin to work out how high can I jump based on how fast I can run. And what we can do, oh, sorry, I was going to mention as well, when we do this, that when I land here, at this point where I land, I'm going to land and I have pretty much around about 6 meters per second of speed, so, which is around about 20 miles an hour. I'll fall at 20 miles an hour like this because this is 6 meters high and acceleration due to gravity is, give or take, 10 meters per second. I'm going to hit that at around about 6 meters per second. During that time that I stop, I will actually come to a complete stop in 0.1 of a second. And during that time, I'll actually pull very close to 6G, slightly over 6G. Now, to give you an idea, a racing car under braking, that's the that's the biggest force that they can apply is braking. A racing car, when it's braking, can apply about 5G. When I say that's a Formula One racing car. When the Apollo 16 rocket re-entered the Earth, it pulled at maximum 7G. So we are actually pulling, fighter pilots around about 4 to 5G. We are pulling more G than a fighter pilot when we hit the map there. It's one of the reasons we do it. It's actually good fun. We enjoy doing it because it is fun. So there's an awful lot of G forces going on here. We've got our calculations though there. Now let me get rid of the superfluous parts such as the Tesla because we don't need him. Although I'm sure we'd all like one. The parts we actually need are here. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how we can calculate this. So we've got my 3,174 kilojoules just here. And then what we've got over here is we've got 75 kilos, 9.81 there. So what we do, this is how we do it. We have to do it by maths. We do 3,174 because energy is not being created or dissipated in any way. And then what we do is we divide that by the 75 kilos times by the 9.81 meters a second. I'll put the units in. And what we've got is this comes out, this works out at 735.75. Apologies, let me bring this thing a bit closer so you can see my calculations. I did these calculations earlier, so I didn't have to remember them. So I'm not doing this out the top of my head. I actually did these calculations earlier. And this equals 4.31 meters. So 3,174 kilojoules at a mass of 75 kilos, gravity equaling 9.81 meters per second will give me a height of 4.31 meters. However, there's a bit of a problem in that. And the problem is that my personal best was actually 5.10 meters. Now, going on the first law of thermodynamics, that energy cannot be created or destroyed, in theory somewhere, we have created an extra 79 centimeters. However, I can show you how this works. Because what we've done is we've worked out how far we have raised the center of mass. So we don't actually begin at ground level or ground zero. We begin at the center of mass. That's one I prepared earlier. So we measure from there to there, and we find out, in my case, it's 92 centimeters to my center of mass. So I can add that back into this, 0.92, there we are. And we've actually got 523. So that tells you that at some point I lost 13 centimeters in there. But what we've got now is we've shown that what's on one side equals the other side. You'll have hated this from maths because I used to hate it when the teacher did this, and they'd write QED, quod erat demonstratum, meaning thus it is demonstrated. However, we can use the Latin for jumped, and we can call it desolute. Thus it is jumped. That's how the physics of pole vaulting works. Guys, that's it. Are there any questions? There must be some questions on that.
There's questions particularly around the pole vault bit. Yeah.
Any questions that you'd like to ask?
Do you mind if I get started? I think my one was, again, it sounds like, you know, it's quite a perilous sport, isn't it? Have you ever hurt yourself?
Yeah, many times. And on an ongoing basis, I still do it now. I'll be honest, my body's a wreck because of the forces involved. I still try to do it as best as I can, but yeah, it's my body's wrecked as a result of doing it. There's very, very few pole vaulters carry on beyond about 32, 33 because the body's just wrecked. There are times when if we don't get the pole enough energy here and we don't commit enough into the takeoff, the pole will bend and go back up that way and fire us back down the runway. And then the G-forces, we're not landing in a 30 centimeter here, we're compressing them about a millimeter. So we just get destroyed if that happens. And unfortunately, there are some fatalities, but yeah, it's a very, very high risk sport. But in fairness, there are a few sports which will give you the chance to accelerate upside down 3 times faster than Model S can go, and you can pull more G than a fighter pilot. We do it because it's fun, is the truth.
Nice. Yeah, Holly.
Have you ever seen anyone land on the pole on the other side?
Has anyone? Have you ever seen anyone land on the pole on the other side?
Yes, unfortunately, it does happen. If you look it up on YouTube and look up YouTube fails, you'll see there's a guy, and often the bar is here. We'll let go of the pole here, and he lets go of the pole. It passes under the bar, and it actually lands here, right where it wouldn't want to land. And he injures himself in the private parts, the way falling down to the mat. It was it's not uncommon actually, but this was filmed in the World Championships. It happened in the World Championships, so obviously that particular clip has gone viral, and I think it's probably about 10 years ago that happened. But yeah, they do fall on the pole, and sometimes people get spiked and skewered. One time myself, I was vaulting, I was in this position here, and the pole snapped. The bottom part rotated like this and came through and actually cut a bit of a slice out of my leg as it came through, because the end of a pole, when it breaks, is jagged. It's jagged and glass, like fiberglass. So it's going to cut you if it goes through. Yeah, so it can be dangerous at times. That being said, I wouldn't want to put anybody off. I would encourage you to try and do it, because you know it can be intimidating going to an athletics track, firstly, and secondly, it can be intimidating going up to the pole vault coach and saying, I'd like to give this a go, but we love it if you try. We don't care if you're good at it. We just want people to try it and enjoy it.
Brilliant. And I know we're centering around biomechanics, and I've been trying to follow the maths on the whiteboard behind me as we go as well. I know we've got your board there. It would be great if we could get a picture of that sent over as well, if you get a chance at the end.
I will bring it in as well so you can see the maths. Maths is not my strong point. Physics I'm all right at, but maths, no, not so good at. But this kind of mathematics is pretty straightforward. You can actually go through it and do a different calculation altogether, where because mass is in, you cross it out and then you divide by 2, and basically it turns out that height essentially is half of velocity squared. Essentially, that's what it is. But I didn't want to break the thing down into a mathematical formula, because I wanted to show that these constants of mass and of gravity are always there, and they're always affecting the system. Because if we don't account for them, we're just treating something as mathematics, not biomechanics. So certainly I'll take a picture of that and I'll send that over to you.
That's brilliant. In terms of coaching pole vault, at what kind of level would you maybe introduce some of this kind of the physics and the maths in terms of helping improve performance?
From the very outset, Paul, because speed affects height. Now, even if the pole doesn't begin to bend, because you find that if they haven't got enough speed and they're not gripping high enough, the pole will not bend for them at all. Excuse me. So the pole won't bend for them. So physics is affecting everything from the very outset. Certainly as well, gripping to the pole, if they're not strong enough and they haven't got good enough grip in the forearm, friction will affect things. So at every level, at every part, physics is affecting it all the time. In terms of teaching someone a pole vaulter, this is the kind of thing that we'd explain to a pole vault coach, but not to the pole vaulter, unless they have a particular proclivity for physics. Yeah. If they do, they'll find this very interesting. If they don't, they just want to know, how do I jump higher? And the answer is run faster. Get better technique and just run faster.
Run faster, grip harder.
Yeah, and there's a component of strength, because as the athlete turns upside down and holds themselves up, I mean, one of the things that's a common thing that people discuss a lot in fitness at the minute is your core strength, how strong you are here. Imagine you've got to be strong enough to withstand accelerating 3 times faster than the Tesla Model S, upside down, inverted, holding onto a pole like this without flopping all over the place. So there's a tremendous element of strength included in just holding that body position dynamically as you move throughout the vault. So get stronger, get faster, and improve your technique. That's really it. And for that, the coach is necessary. But we've got to be safe as well, because we need a good landing pad to land on. We need a sensible coach that's not going to say, just go all the way back and run like mad the first time. Gains are usually made, 10, 20 centimeters a year, just a small amount each time. And the first year you'll gain a meter when you do this. But when you get good at it, you might gain 30 centimeters a year if you do it well. It takes a long time to get good at it.
Okay. Excellent. Any other questions from the group in terms of biomechanics of it? Injuries? Might have one second.
Like the championship levels of pole vaulting.
Yeah.
Right? Are most of the athletes quite tall, because is when that tall you are in the air, the higher the moment of inertia. Or is that wrong?
One of the students is asking about the height of the pole vaulters, because I think you mentioned about, also you said about the center of mass on takeoff being an additional height element.
Yeah, and there are 2 advantages actually to being tall when you do this. Let me just put this back. In fact, if I keep this here, I can just draw it, because it makes it easier to explain if I get my pen. Being taller is an advantage at this point of the pole vault. I'll show you why. In the old days, when people were pole vaulting, if you have a pole that is here, you have an angle here of, let's call it X. I couldn't tell you what it'll be, but it'll be X, okay? Something like that. Now, when the pole is bending, do you see the bottom here? That angle there is much greater there. So a flexible pole allows a greater ground to pole angle. Now, in the days of a straight pole, this would be here like this. So it's a lower angle. The taller you are, the greater the ground to pole angle you are, and you're able to grip higher in the pole vault. So it makes it easier. Where it's a disadvantage is in the inversion phase, because you've got more of your body length to invert and to turn upside down. But by and large, most pole vaulters will be, they're varying sizes and shapes. I mean, I'm 1.7 meters, so I'm very short for a pole vaulter, but they'll be anywhere between 1.8 and up to 1.95, some are even 2 meters, but they're all within that range. Beyond that range, they're not physically capable of turning upside down very easily. They find it very, very difficult. And below that range, it's hard to grip high. It's notable that the world record holders for the last 50 plus years have all been around about 5'11" to 6'2". None of them have been outside of that range. So that's kind of, it's a very, very short range. Much in the same as you find all gymnasts are going to be between 4'10" and 5'4". They're all going to be small. Most basketball players, they're going to be big. They're going to be tall. So yeah, definitely there's a propensity for athletes within that. For females, the height range would be probably more varied. And you could say between about 5'4", which is about 1.6 meters, and some of them will be as tall as 1.8 meters. So there's a greater variance in the females than there is in the males. The big variance actually between male and female heights in terms of height cleared is essentially down to this component here, mass, velocity, sorry. The female athletes do not achieve the same velocity as the male athletes, and that's the reason they will not jump as high. Before females began competing, maybe 40 years ago, there were calculations done, and they said that females would only ever be able to achieve a height of 4.4 meters, because one of the limiting factors, you can only go as high as your weakest limiting factor, whether it be speed, strength, flexibility, gymnastic ability. One of the things that was going to be thought to affect female vaulters back then in the old days was grip strength, their ability to apply a frictional force to the pole. However, the female vaulters have disproved that beyond any doubt. And the world record for females is very close to my own personal best. The world record for female vaulters is 5.06 meters. So without any doubt, they've shown that that is not a limiting factor. But the limiting factor for the ladies is the approach speed in here. That's the thing that limits them compared to the men. It's interesting actually that if a cheater, I saw the calculation for this yesterday, if a cheater were actually able to pole vault, which they can't obviously, but if a cheater were able to pole vault, it would have a potential to jump close to 50 meters.
Wow.
How you would train a cheater to pole vault, it's beyond me. But with that level of speed, that would be what you would be able to achieve.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other questions, ladies and gents, on the pole vault in biomechanics? No. No, that's no questions on the pole vaulting element.
Cool. Paul, I'll take a photo of this and I'll send that across to you. And if you'd be good enough to send me the link, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
Guys, I hope you all enjoyed it. I know it's quite heavy in terms of what's going on with all of these different forces, but I find it interesting. Hopefully maybe you will as you progress through your studies. But good luck with your studies. I hope it works well for you.
They're going to have to apply some of this because I'm going to be using this as actually part of their assignment. So they're going to have to make use of it. So
okay, guys, take a photo of this screen because everything you need is on those two sides of the screen. Quickly sneak a photo of that because that will help you.
Yeah, we'll make sure they get that. That's absolutely brilliant. We had some generic more generic questions, not necessarily centered around biomechanics. If you had some time just for, I know we've rolled over a little bit in terms of what we initially had in mind. But have you got 5 minutes just for a little general Q&A?
Yeah, no problem. That's fine. Yeah, no problem at all. I just wanted, as long as I got through the first part of the biomechanics within the half an hour, Paul, I was quite happy to do Q&A as long as, because you said that I had 30 minutes and I didn't want the guys being late. But I mean, this lecture, if I was doing this lecture to athletics coaches, we probably would spend about an hour and a half going into each of the components. So, you know, it's that was a very quick overview of it. You'll notice yourself, Paul, I didn't break this down, the kilograms into newtons yet. You know, they'll be able to apply that themselves.
Thank you for condensing, and you know, the whistle stop version is still super beneficial for them. So thank you very much for that. I got some of them to write down some of the questions. Some of them are centered around you creating, obviously, Boxercise. You can see that there, you labeled up on the t-shirt. Yeah. One of them was just kind of what made you want to create Boxercise back when you did.
It wasn't as such a eureka moment. What happened was that people wanted to do boxing related fitness. I was at university doing sports science. People wanted to do boxing related fitness, but they didn't want to get in the boxing ring with us and get punched in the face, understandably so. And so there were rugby players, football players, hockey players, swimmers, and they wanted to do the fitness element of it, but without getting smacked in the face. So what happened was they came and they did some of the training with us in a club that was just called After Boxing Club. We didn't have a name for it. Not until there was a young Canadian lady and she said, why don't you just call it Boxercise? It's boxing exercise. And that was where the name came from. It was as a result of that. I was involved in coach education, doing this kind of stuff for British athletics. And I was asked by other trainers, would you be able to train us to teach Boxercise? So I just put my knowledge and background as a professional boxer together with my knowledge of coach education. And I've been doing it for 30 years. So I never expected it to grow into anything. I genuinely just thought it would be something that a few friends would do down at Brunel University. I had no idea it would spread to over 50 countries. That's the truth. But there was no big plan of I want this to happen. It was just, it happened organically. That's the easiest answer.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. It happened organically, I think, is a nice round off for whoever's question that was. What made you kind of pursue the career that you've kind of followed? So kind of what, I guess really, what was your inspiration, or what was your kind of, you know, your background with that?
It's a bit of a strange one, actually, because what happened with this was that when I began, I always wanted to be self-employed and I wanted to be a coach. Didn't really matter whether it was athletics, boxing, or whatever, but it didn't exist. And when I told people that's what I wanted to do, people said it didn't exist. If something doesn't exist, you create it. So what I was doing was I was working a full-time job and then coaching in the evening. It was only when Boxercise came along as such and we started charging fees for people to train that job became created. And now it's a job that, you know, personal training, those sorts of things, those kinds of jobs are now commonplace, but 30 years ago, they didn't exist. And when I said what I wanted to do, people laughed at me and they said, you can't do that because it doesn't exist. My advice to any of you sat there and someone's laughing at you, saying something doesn't exist, create it. Don't take no for an answer, just create it. Oh, my dog's just come in to say hello.
Nice.
One of the dogs has just come in to say hello. She obviously disagrees with the previous statement. So yeah, if it doesn't exist, create it and don't take no for an answer. And it's better to try and fail than it is to not try at all. And don't be afraid of failing. There's been several things I've done that have failed and they've not worked. I just keep it to myself and I just plod on to the next thing and just try to keep improving, just try and work on yourself and just be a better version of yourself.
Nice, excellent. And I think we round off with this last one, which was there ever a point where you wanted to quit and kind of throw in the towel?
Yeah, about every week. Every week I want to quit. There are days when it is so hard. That's life in general. Thing is, and this is the honest truth, nobody cares. Succeeding is hard, failing is hard. Choose your hard. Marriage is hard, divorce is hard, choose your hard. Studying is hard, laying about and earning no money is hard, choose your hard. You just have to choose which hard you're going to go for. So do I feel like quitting? Yes, sometimes I do, and probably on a weekly basis, but I choose a different hard and I just grind it out. But yeah, would I like to retire at some point? Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant. That's actually I think that's really nice, kind of quite motivational little snippet at the end there to round off. So I think just thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much for obviously the pole vault biomechanics overview. And we'll be making use of that and obviously your motivational elements at the end. I think that's really, really nice for these guys as well to round off. So thank you very much.
If it helps one person, it's done the job. So I hope you've enjoyed it, guys.
No, honestly, it's been brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your thoughts and your insights as well. It's been brilliant having you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Cheers, guys.
I'll just stop the recording there.